Mentioning the Vietnam War usually sparks an immediate, intense debate. Arguments will rage back and forth over American military tactics, the political justifications for intervening, and whether the United States ever really had a chance at victory. But inside that massive historical debate, there is a glaring blind spot, staggering test of human endurance. For nearly 20 years, the population was locked in a vicious, bloody guerrilla war that eventually forced an American retreat. This map illustrates the core American fear at the time, the domino theory. The assumption was that if Vietnam fell to communism, a chain reaction would sweep across Southeast Asia. But after the American withdrawal, that hypothetical global spread simply never happened. The United States failed because it misjudged the core motivation of its enemy. The North Vietnamese fought an existential war for national survival, viewing the conflict through the lens of their long history of resistance rather than from a Marxist economic manual. This timeline maps out Vietnam's baseline reality heading into the 20th century. For 1,000 years, the nation endured a relentless cycle of foreign occupation and cultural assimilation, primarily driven by China. By the late 19th century, French colonial governors had completely stripped the nation of its autonomy, leaving figures like Emperor Bao Dai to rule in name only, while colonial authorities aggressively suppressed any hint of native resistance. The pushback against this system began an ocean away. While scraping together a living in Paris in the 1920s, a young expat named Ho Chi Minh discovered a radical new ideology called communism. Ho Chi Minh prioritized national liberation over strict Marxist theory. He adopted communism specifically for its promise of equality and its tactical utility in overthrowing imperialist systems. As he later stated, his primary driver was patriotism. This pragmatism led to a surprisingly close alliance. In 1945, Ho Chi Minh actually partnered with the U.S. Office of Strategic Services, the precursor to the CIA, to fight Japanese occupiers. When he declared the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, he opened his speech by quoting the American Declaration of Independence to a cheering crowd. But the newly elected Truman administration had no interest in cooperating with an openly communist regime. Cold War paranoia overrode the brief alliance. America abandoned Vietnamese independence and instead backed the returning French colonial forces, leaving Vietnam no choice but to take up arms to secure its own freedom. After finally defeating the French in 1954, the country was split in two. The United States stepped in to heavily fund the new state of South Vietnam, led by a staunch anti-communist named Ngo Dinh Diem. Diem quickly consolidated power by rigging referendums and ignoring international promises to hold reunification votes with the North. These actions, combined with his refusal to cooperate on land reform, sparked immediate DRV-backed insurgencies across the South. The resulting clash pitted two entirely different strategies against each other. American forces relied on massive conventional firepower and technological superiority. The Vietnamese military understood they could never win a traditional battlefield victory, so they committed to a grueling war of attrition. To survive the onslaught, the resistance moved underground, and they dug over 200 miles of extensive tunnel networks. These deep excavations functioned as entire subterranean cities, designed to hide troops from detection and endure long periods of bombardment. Above ground, the United States expanded its bombing campaigns across the North. This rained destruction on rural civilians, who had almost no context for the massive geopolitical conflict taking place. One survivor recalled seeing an American B-57 and wondering why a mother airplane was dropping baby airplanes on his village. When U.S. troops responded to guerrilla attacks by declaring entire villages free fire zones, zones where anyone could be shot without question, and committing atrocities like the My Lai massacre, they pushed the local population past the breaking point. Northern military leaders amplified these horrors through relentless propaganda campaigns, easily swaying a traumatized public. The reliance on overwhelming aerial power had an unintended psychological effect. Each bombing raid reinforced the Northern Party's narrative that the war was a necessary struggle for national survival against another foreign aggressor. The illusion of American control finally shattered during the 1968 Tet Offensive. Resistance forces caught the military completely by surprise, bypassing the remote jungles and penetrating the heavily guarded centers of South Vietnamese cities, proving to the American public that nowhere in the country was safe. By the early 1970s, the endless jungle warfare had taken its toll. American troop morale plummeted, soldiers began openly ignoring orders or deserting in record numbers, and the United States initiated a desperate withdrawal of its own traumatized forces. The conflict reached its climax in 1975. The North launched a massive military push known as the Ho Chi Minh Campaign, smashing through the remaining defenses around Saigon and definitively decapitating the Western-backed republic to unite the country. Yet the ultimate irony of the conflict revealed itself in the years that followed. Despite the communist victory in Vietnam, the international domino theory failed to materialize, rendering decades of foreign policy obsession utterly pointless. The United States entered the conflict trying to fight a geopolitical proxy war, but they were fighting a population driven by an unyielding desire for national survival. That fatal lack of understanding cost millions of lives, leaving a deep, enduring scar across the entire Vietnamese nation.